I'm sorry, you're putting me where? That's the only thing I managed to choke out as Mark, my boss, leaned back in his ergonomic throne, swirling his reusable Starbucks cup like it was a damn chalice. Reception, Sharon, he said, with the smug benevolence of a man who just decided which of his dogs gets the smaller steak. We're undergoing a departmental realignment, and your talents would be best leveraged in a more client-facing capacity. You're very warm. Warm, he said, like a scented candle, like a Glade plug-in, like my 18 years of systems architecture, product innovation, and late-night server debugging sessions were nothing but a cozy afterthought. Now, I've been insulted before. I've had code stolen, credit rerouted, been called aggressively competent by execs who couldn't spell SQL. But this was psychological napalm, an intentional career guillotine, gift-wrapped in synergy speak. And I knew why. Mark had that sweaty glow of a man who just got away with murder. The Northwind project, my project, was suddenly too critical to be handled by just one person, and wouldn't you know it, Mark had graciously stepped in to stabilize it. Oh, and quick thing, since you've made it this far into the rage parade, 97% of you are listening to stories like this without subscribing. It's like watching someone light a corporate dumpster fire and not grabbing popcorn. Hit the like, smash the sub, it fuels our petty little revenge engine like nothing else. Anyway, he handed me the new schedule like he was offering a consolation prize. 4 weeks of reception coverage, pending team restructuring outcomes. Translation: until you quit, or we find a way to fire you without an HR lawsuit. My name badge was already reprinted. I saw the second O in coordinator smirking up at me from the glossy plastic. They had planned this. The paper was warm, freshly laminated. Mark probably microwaved it for extra insult. You'll be a great front-facing asset, he said, like I was a damn shelf at Bed Bath & Beyond. Clients love a familiar face. I stared at him, hard, long enough for his contact lenses to dry out. And in that moment, between the second-hand air freshener and the click of his standing desk rising like a smug tide, I realized something. He was scared. Not of me, not yet, but of being average, of being outshined, of knowing deep in the fiber-optic wiring of his soul that he had no ideas of his own. Mark was the kind of man who clicked undo and thought it made him a programmer. Sure, I said finally. Reception sounds warm. I left the office with my spine locked and my jaw in pieces. I passed by the glass-walled conference room where my old team was getting briefed on my framework, now lovingly rebranded as the Mark methodology. I saw Kevin from DevOps trying not to make eye contact. I saw Anna, my old mentee, glancing between the projector and the door like she was trying to figure out if she was complicit. I didn't blame them. Not yet. When I got to the front desk, the chair squeaked like a cartoon fart. Keyboard had crumbs in it. My inbox was full of onboarding guides I had personally rewritten 2 years ago. And taped to the monitor was a post-it from the last receptionist. Don't let the UPS guy flirt with you unless he's brought donuts. He lies. I sat down. My spine cracked like bubble wrap, and I stared straight ahead, thinking about how far you can fall in a single Tuesday morning, from architect to greeter, from keynote speaker to glorified doorbell. Then I noticed something. The phones were ringing off-pattern, like syncopated panic. The screens were glitching, intermittent data transfers stalling between our internal systems and the Northwind servers, email chains spiraling, order confirmations missing attachments, time-stamped backups misaligned by hours. Mark didn't steal a finished machine. He stole half a framework, and that half couldn't keep up with the real world. And I was the only one who could see it. The front lines, from the belly of the corporate beast. And somewhere under all the humiliation, buried beneath the sour coffee breath of defeat, a little thought bloomed like mold in a dark corner. I could fix this. But not for them. Never for them again. The reception desk chair had a slump to it. Not a worn-in, human-shaped comfort kind of slump, more like it had absorbed the despair of every intern, temp, and exiled soul who'd ever been sentenced to sit in it. The cushion smelled faintly of peppermint gum and professional regret. My name tag caught the morning sun and reflected off the glass like a distress signal. First hour in, Kevin from DevOps shuffled by, did a double take, and then offered the kind of smile you reserve for sick relatives. They really got you manning the desk, huh? No, Kevin, I requested it. It's always been my dream to be the first line of defense against fax spam. Blinked and walked off like someone caught peeking into a casket. The trickle of pity was constant. Every time someone passed, I got the same exact look. Lips pursed, eyebrows doing that a tilt, as if I'd lost a beloved pet and not, a 16-year career. One lady from HR even brought me a biscotti. No note, just laid it next to the phone like a funeral offering. It tasted like regret and almonds. And so began the mindless grind, transferring calls, booking courier pickups, buzzing in food deliveries for meetings I used to lead. I was basically Alexa with a pulse. My inbox was a graveyard of calendar invites I wasn't part of anymore. But something started to catch my ear. A rhythm. A pattern. 3 times that morning, I got calls routed from panicked client liaisons. One, in particular, was from Northwind's project manager, man I'd spoken to hundreds of times when I still had an office and a soul. He didn't know it was me on the other end when he barked. This is the 3rd time this month our product data has been corrupted on upload. This is a disaster. What the hell is going on over there? I kept my voice neutral. One moment, sir. I'll connect you with the project coordinator. Which, let's be real, and I sent him into the eternal loop of Mark's department's new automated intake system. I could practically hear his blood pressure rising through the phone line. That call stuck with me, not because it was unusual, but because it wasn't. The cracks were everywhere. Client messages were bouncing. File formats were mismatched. Embedded metadata was vanishing somewhere between transmission and confirmation. And all of this was happening beneath the level anyone upstairs even looked. See, the thing about front desk duty is, it's the artery of the building. Every courier, every client, every contractor and panicked junior manager runs their crisis through you. You become the eye of the quietest storm. And the more I watched, the more I realized. The Northwind implementation wasn't just messy. It was failing. Not because the devs were lazy or the clients were dumb, but because the system Mark hijacked was never designed to do what he'd promised. Original architecture was meant for internal modular sync, not this Frankenstein's monster of cross-client real-time data validation. And instead of building on it properly, he slapped a marketing sticker on it and hoped no one noticed the gaps. But I noticed. I saw everything from this desk. The desperate notes from the implementation team. The courier labeled priority from legal that no one signed for because Mark's door was always closed. Third post-it from accounting asking for help understanding a corrupted file transfer. They didn't need a new system patch. They needed a new system. That realization didn't hit me like a thunderbolt. It snuck in, quiet, patient, like a raccoon pushing open a screen door. One moment I was thumbing through a delivery log. The next I was pulling out a pen and sketching a network architecture diagram on the back of a catering invoice. Data handling. Pre-validation nodes, end-to-end checksum verification with rollback contingency. My fingers remembered before my brain did. Suddenly, I was tracing outlines of a system that could handle Northwind's needs, something more agile than what we ever dared build in-house, something that used client-side validation to prevent the very kinds of errors they were drowning in. It wasn't a patch. It was a revolution. And I was the only person in the building who had the vision and the vantage point to see it. Reception duty, huh? They'd accidentally made me omniscient. That was the first real moment I smiled all day. A crooked thing, half rage, half rebirth. Let them keep underestimating me. Let them walk past my desk with their smirks and silence. I was already drawing blueprints. By day 3, the receptionist's smile had cracked clean off my face. I was no longer trying to fake polite. I answered phones like a hitman answers burner calls. Corporate front desk. I'd mutter, eyes locked not on the caller ID, but on my tablet screen tucked low behind the clunky Dell monitor. The trick was posture. Look just hunched enough to seem defeated, and no one suspects you're laying the foundation for a digital guillotine. I was building something. Between back-to-back FedEx drop-offs and scheduling, yet another urgent sushi delivery for the exec floor was quietly mapping out an entire modular framework that would make the company's current infrastructure look like duct tape on a leaky submarine. The back of delivery slips, now blueprints. A conference swag notepad that said think bigger, full of packet flow diagrams and error handling logic. My Sharpie ran dry before lunchtime. The system I was designing didn't just patch the Northwind mess, it sidestepped it entirely. It would live off-platform, external, clean, revalidation at the user level, cryptographic logging, client-tone checkpoints. I wanted it idiot-proof and sabotage-resistant. Every line I drew was one more nail in the coffin of Mark's precious Northwind vision. But there was a problem. I was still inside their walls, still technically one of their people. If I created this under their umbrella, even by accident, they could claim it, which meant I needed an exit ramp, something private, something legal. Enter Danny from IT. Danny, bless his snack-hoarding little soul, had once built a crypto miner out of conference room thermostats, so he owed me. I flagged him down while he was refilling his M&M tickets at the vending machine. Got a weird issue with my personal laptop, I said casually. I need to use it during breaks for some coursework, but I can't get it to connect to the guest Wi-Fi without setting off the firewall dragons. He squinted at me like I'd asked him to decode alien frequencies. Please don't make me talk to Rick in InfoSec, I added, grimacing. I'd rather staple my eyelid to the desk. Danny sighed. Okay. I can proxy you through the maintenance VLAN if you promise not to torrent Russian cinema again. One time, and it had subtitles, he waved me off. 10 minutes later, I had secure, untraceable internet access. Nothing routed through company servers, and he even tossed me a thumb drive for backups and whispered, "Don't tell me anything you're doing." Plausible deniability. I could have kissed him. With the internet unlocked, the real work began. I spent slow hours diving into US patent law, what counted as a process, what clauses kept your idea out of corporate reach, what the cheapest route was to file without drawing early attention. I learned about provisional filings, LLC loopholes, legal gray zones so murky they practically dripped mold. If my brain was a whiteboard, it was covered corner to corner by the end of that week. At one point, someone from accounting walked past my desk, glanced down, and blinked at a napkin where I diagrammed a reverse CRC handshake protocol using stick figures. Lunch doodles, I said without missing a beat. Trying to eat fewer carbs. She nodded, walked off. People were so eager not to make eye contact with the fallen, they'd let you hide nuclear launch codes in plain sight. And in that strange in-between world, where I was both janitor and ghost, I started to feel alive again. I hadn't written code in months. I hadn't architected something truly mine in years. I had given this company every ounce of innovation I had, and they rewarded me with a chair that squeaked every time I shifted. But from the reception desk, I was building an empire. Between snack deliveries and elevator buzzes, I was crafting a patent that would turn the entire corporate pyramid on its head. Let them think I was broken. Let them see a desk jockey in discount flats. Underneath, I was soldering together a machine made of spite, logic, and industrial-grade ambition. And soon, very soon, they'd realize they'd given me the perfect view from which to strike. Clicked Submit Patent Application on a cracked tablet screen balanced behind the receptionist monitor, while a guy named Todd from Facilities droned on about a missing stapler. One moment I was nodding along, pretending to care about industrial fasteners. The next I was finalizing a legal document that would dropkick an entire department into the void. The name on the paperwork, Synergistic Workflow Solutions, LLC, bland enough to dissolve into any spreadsheet, sounded like a think tank founded by oatmeal. That was the point, camouflage. The LLC went live the next morning, registered in Delaware because of course. I even picked the most forgettable font for the logo, Arial. Not even bold Arial, just Arial, corporate invisibility cloak. The patent itself was clean, watertight, and carefully worded to avoid language I'd ever used in our internal documentation. Every diagram redrawn, every process step reframed. I triple-checked metadata, buried the filing deep under generic keywords. You'd have better luck finding Atlantis in a Tupperware warehouse. But this wasn't just about protecting the design. Filing the patent was defense. What I needed next was offense. Because if I waited for Mark's team to fail and for someone upstairs to maybe notice, I'd be stuck playing corporate Hunger Games for another year. No, this wasn't about being right. This was about forcing their hand. So I picked up the phone. Northwind. I knew their CTO, Russell Patel. I'd worked with him on a side project years ago when both our companies still believed in collaboration over politics. Smart guy, terrible at small talk, excellent at sniffing out cost inefficiencies. I called his assistant from a burner number and pitched myself as a third-party consultant from, wait for it, Synergistic Workflow Solutions. I used a fake voice, a little scratchier, slightly more Midwestern. Think Linda from procurement after 2 mimosas. Left a message saying I had a solution to the data corruption issue plaguing the Northwind pipeline and that I could save them millions in rework, audit downtime, and client churn. Didn't expect a call back so fast. 2 hours later, my burner buzzed during lunch while I was pretending to label ink cartridges. It was Russell himself. Walk me through it, he said. So I did. 15 minutes in, he asked if I could demo it that week. I said absolutely, just needed to prep the visuals. Translation: stay up until 3 a.m. in my bathtub, rewriting my flowcharts to look like they'd been made by a consultant with a graphic design minor. Over the next 2 nights, I built a pitch deck so clean it practically glowed. Charts, cost comparisons, live error logs I scraped from publicly exposed debug endpoints. Nothing confidential, just embarrassingly sloppy. I made their current system look like a game of telephone played by drunk raccoons. My solution? Elegant, modular, secure. I wrapped it all in bland consultant speak. Client-validated logic tiers. Layered authentication reconciliation. Basically corporate catnip. When I walked into that video call, I wore a blazer over pajama pants and angled the camera up just enough to hide my receptionist badge. Russell didn't care. He saw the numbers, saw the fix. By the end of the call, he said 7 words that made my palms sweat cold. Can we license this? Exclusively and immediately? I took a beat. Absolutely. I'll have my legal send over a draft agreement. My legal was a $39 template from an online doc service that promised Fortune 500 grade NDAS and had a cartoon owl as their mascot. Edited it to sound terrifying and sent it from a Gmail address linked to my LLC domain. By Friday, it was signed. A multi-year exclusive licensing agreement between Northwind Corp. And Synergistic Workflow Solutions, LLC. The patent was locked. The terms were binding, and any attempt to reverse engineer the system without authorization, breach of license, penalties, legal hellfire. Printed the contract on the office printer at 7:43 a.m. while the cleaning crew was still vacuuming under the cubicles. Folded it. Filed it in my personal briefcase under the tab labeled Ticking Time Bomb. Back at my desk, I buzzed in a guy delivering a box of branded water bottles for some team-building workshop upstairs. Receptionist, he said, tipping the box onto the counter. Rough gig? I looked at him. Smiled like a wolf in a cardigan. Not for long. The meeting took place at 2:00 p.m. sharp on a Thursday, which meant I had exactly 6 minutes to pretend I was going on a break, slip into the abandoned side conference room next to the vending machines, and launch a corporate coupe wearing drugstore mascara and a borrowed blazer that smelled faintly of cat pee and peppermint schnapps. The webcam flicked on. There he was, Russell Patel, CTO of Northwind, his permanent expression of skeptical constipation. I used to hate that face. Today, it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen since coffee. Thanks for making the time, I said, keeping my voice pitched just business casual enough to sound like someone who charges $450/hour to tell you your firewall's insecure. No problem, he said, eyeing the file I'd just shared. You're the consultant from Synergistic. That's right. Done some quiet work in compliance architecture and validation pipelines. Nothing public-facing, all white label, which was technically true because nothing existed until 72 hours ago, and I was the only employee, the founder, and the janitor. He clicked through my deck, expression tightening as he moved from the diagnostics page to the side-by-side architecture diagrams. I watched his brow furrow, then rise, then twitch, telling me this system would eliminate 95% of our current revalidation loops. Minimum, I said, tapping the screen. Most of your bottlenecks stem from cascading translation mismatches between upstream file structures and downstream compliance confirmations. You're manually correcting for what should be pre-validated at the point of origin. He sat back, the kind of lean that meant you just rearranged his whole worldview. We've been patching symptoms, not solving the problem. That's not uncommon, I said, smiling with a practiced humility that could curdle milk. A lot of orgs hit this wall. Legacy infrastructure grows in layers like a hoarder's attic. Our process just clears the path. He stared at me, then opened a second window. I heard furious typing, probably pulling internal numbers, cost projections, or maybe just slamming his keyboard from joy. How scalable is this? Infinitely, modularity by design. The patent protects both the logic flow and the pre-authorization framework, so no one else can touch it without triggering a license breach. He stopped typing. You filed the patent already? Provisional and utility, I said, and held up a folder with the filing confirmation like I was showing him baby photos. And that's when it happened, when I felt it. That shift, the silent tremor under the floor. Because suddenly, Russell wasn't looking at a vendor. He was looking at leverage, a life raft, a way to get Northwind's whole pipeline back on track without begging for internal devs to patch things until Q4. How fast can you implement this? We don't need to, it's licensed tech. We provide the framework and integration keys. You install it on your side. No internal build required. He rubbed his temple. Jesus. Okay. What's your rate? I named a number so high I nearly gagged on it. He didn't blink. Just said, send the agreement. I already had it ready, drafted, digitally signed. All I had to do was hit send, which I did. And within 10 minutes, the e-signature came back through, complete with timestamp, initials, and legal footnotes. Northwind now had an exclusive license to use my patented system for 5 years, with automatic renewals, penalty clauses for breach, a clause that required them to notify all vendors of the new required standards within 2 weeks. Translation: Mark's team would be legally forced to comply with my system, or they'd lose the contract. As the meeting ended, Russell nodded once, almost reverently. Brilliant work. I'll have my infrastructure lead start prepping integration on our end. This solves everything. Glad we could help, I said. Let me know if you need anything else. The call ended. I sat there for a full minute, staring at my reflection in the darkened screen. Smiling, not wide, just tight, bone deep, because I'd done it. From a desk that still smelled like Febreze and printer ink, I had sold my soul's work right out from under them and handed it to their largest, most influential client. But the smile didn't last, because now came the fallout. Now the system would roll downhill, picking up speed, smashing deadlines and egos, and carefully guarded illusions of competence. I had just set off a bomb in a briefcase, and I would be at the front desk when the smoke reached upstairs. The email hit at 9:17 a.m. on a Monday, prime time for pain. I know because I heard the gasps. Like a ripple of nervous laughter that forgot how to laugh. It just buzzed in a courier lugging overpriced gluten-free muffins for the weekly Agile sync when the first thunderclap rolled down the hallway from the project floor. Wait, what do you mean we can't push the update? That was Greg from Quality Assurance. Loud, panicked. The kind of tone that makes interns quietly minimize their tabs and pray to every tech god known to Jira. By 9:21, 2 more voices joined in. Then chairs scraped. Then someone ran. Not walked, ran, down the hallway clutching a laptop like it was a bomb with a countdown. I already knew what they were looking at. The same message that had just lit up the inbox of every exec with a stake in the Northwind account. Effective immediately. All collaborative data transfers and workflow implementation between Northwind Corp. And redacted company name must comply with the standards and processes outlined in our licensed agreement with Synergistic Workflow Solutions, LLC. Please see attached documentation and compliance schema. Deadline for initial confirmation, 10 business days. Full compliance, 30. The attached documentation was 27 pages of legally dense, ironclad architecture, my watermark encoded in the metadata, and a patent number splashed across the top like a warning shot. Every module was sealed, every workflow version locked. They couldn't copy it. They couldn't rebuild it. They couldn't even touch it without tripping a license violation. By 9:36, the Northwind account manager was downstairs demanding to know why our system isn't even halfway ready to integrate, and the receptionist, me, had the absolute pleasure of transferring him to Mark's line while sipping lukewarm breakroom coffee and pretending not to grin. It was beautiful. Mark didn't show his face for the rest of the morning. His door stayed closed. The blinds were drawn. But I heard him through the thin drywall, through the frantic pacing, through the slightly muffled no, we're not changing platforms. This is a misunderstanding. I'm getting clarification now. Clarification. Sure, Mark. Go ahead and clarify why your most important client just jammed a legal crowbar into your project timeline and demanded total compliance with a system you didn't build, don't own, and sure as hell can't fix. Meanwhile, I sat at the front desk like a wax statue of calm, forwarding calls and jotting down fake names for the guest's sign-in sheet just to pass the time. Mr. Chad's spreadsheet visited twice that morning. By lunchtime, 4 emergency meetings had been scheduled. 2 of them conflicted. The new intern cried in the supply closet. Greg from QA accused a junior dev of sabotage, and I watched it all from my swivel chair like a queen watching court jesters stab each other with paperclips. The irony, they still didn't know it was me. They were scrambling through the documentation, combing through license clauses, trying to figure out what SWS was. Some outside consultant, probably, Maybe a competitor trying to edge in. Nobody suspected the quiet woman with a broken badge reader and a drawer full of sugar packets was the one holding the detonator. And Mark was drowning. The Northwind contract was the backbone of his performance review. He'd paraded it around like a prize pig for the last 6 months. His whole promotion package was tied to seamless integration and forward-leaning client-first infrastructure. Now he couldn't even open the damn schematic without consulting legal. That's when I heard it, his voice, rising through the vents during a call with someone upstairs. No, we can't meet the milestone. Not unless we redesign the pipeline, yes, from scratch. No, I don't know how long that would take. I told you we had it under control. Then the slam of a fist on wood. A drawer opened. A cabinet maybe. Papers shuffled. Panic pure and unfiltered. And me. I logged a new support ticket for a missing toner cartridge just to stay logged into the internal system a little longer, listening to the chaos cascade. I didn't need applause. I didn't need credit. Just the sound of Mark choking on his own confidence. That would carry me for weeks. By week 3, the office smelled like panic masked in citrus-scented surface cleaner. You could tell which meetings were about the Northwind disaster because they started on time, ended late, left behind the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals and failed IPOs. People shuffled past my desk with the haunted look of soldiers returning from a war no one trained them for. Mark had gone from smug to skeletal. His once perfect hair, always greased back like a finance bro trying to cosplay a leader, now flopped forward in greasy chunks. His shirt collars looked like they'd been ironed by an angry raccoon. Stopped using his standing desk altogether. Sat hunched over it now, like a gargoyle guarding a crumbling castle. And every day, like clockwork, a new urgent meeting sprouted on the calendar. Names changed, formats shifted, tech alignment touchpoint, Northwind response sync, workflow escalation huddle, but they all boiled down to the same pathetic attempt to dissect the SWS system without a scalpel. From my post at the front desk, I watched them come and go. Saw Russell Patel's polite but increasingly sharp emails roll in. Saw Mark shuffle into conference rooms with diagrams that looked like madman scribbles. Heard whispers in the hallway. Did legal really say we can't even reference their system without clearance? They tried to mirror the logic flow. Got blocked by a hash key. Is it true the CTO at Northwind asked who the hell built this, and nobody had an answer? Yes, all true. I sipped my gas station coffee, signed for Mark's quinoa salad delivery, and logged each meltdown with the precision of a scientist observing a controlled burn. Because that's what it was now, a slow, delicious unraveling. They tried everything. They brought in a third-party dev team to evaluate architecture overlaps. They tried scrubbing the documentation for workarounds. At one point, someone even floated hiring a former contractor to bridge the gap, till legal killed that with a single email citing breach of license, clauses so severe they sounded like medieval punishment. The best part? I didn't need to lift a finger anymore. My system, their problem, was now a black box with spikes on every side. They didn't even know where the doors were, but I did. I sat 12 feet from the printer where their panic memos spilled out. Heard the screaming matches that got cut off when someone realized the vent carried sound. Watched Mark's calendar fill up with reschedules and strategic check-ins with execs who stopped CCing him in follow-ups. Northwind had gone dark. Not silent, but frosty. Delays had consequences. Big ones. Their procurement team had started contacting alternate vendors just in case. One of the execs from upstairs joked that maybe Northwind would just license SWS directly and cut out the middleman. If only they knew. Meanwhile, it was still there, still invisible. Still the person who buzzed in delivery guys and refilled the copier paper while a multi-million-dollar deal slid toward the drain. Still the ghost in the machine. It wasn't rage anymore. That had burned off weeks ago. Rage is loud, messy, impulsive. What I felt now was clean, cold, like glass. Mark was circling the drain, and the only person who could throw him a rope was the woman he thought he buried. But I wasn't coming to save him. I was polishing the knife. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I didn't need to be. I'd imagined it 1,000 times, each version crueler, sharper, more cinematic than the last. The quiet before it drops, the heartbeat pause, the way his face would slowly tilt, just slightly like someone had tilted the axis of his reality and forgot to tell him. It was 3:12 p.m. when legal finally called the meeting. Emergency level priority. Invite only. Patent breach risk assessment. Translation: We just realized the monster in the dark has a name, and it's legally bulletproof. The door shut tight. I watched through the fisheye lens of the security cam feed on the receptionist monitor. 7 people seated, Mark dead center, collar wilted, hairline fighting gravity. He didn't know what was coming. Thought maybe they'd found a loophole, maybe a path forward. What they found instead was me. Imagine it started with something like, we completed our registration trace of the Synergistic Workflow Solutions, LLC. And then a pause, long enough for his pulse to ask, why does that sound familiar? The company's sole registered agent, as well as the applicant and owner of the SWS system patent, is Sharon Fields, right there. That's the moment. That nanosecond when the breath catches in his throat like a chicken bone. Time slows down and the universe taps him on the shoulder to say, remember that woman you demoted? The one you tossed to the wolves and forgot? Yeah, she built the fire. And now you're dancing in it. I picture the blood draining from his face like someone yanked the plug. The slight tremble in his bottom lip as he replays the last 6 weeks. The unreturned calls, the impossible specs. The confidential system so perfectly sealed they couldn't even peek under the hood. The meetings, the screaming, the nights he probably cried into his budget spreadsheet wondering who could have done this. And now he knows, not a stranger, not a rival company. Me, Sharon, the woman he thought was safely out of the way. The woman answering his phone calls, printing his name tags, fetching his lukewarm turkey sandwich while engineering his downfall from 12 feet away. I picture him staring blankly at the wall, trying to process how a front desk nobody could have beaten him at his own game. I picture someone clearing their throat, papers shuffling, a junior legal rep awkwardly whispering something about binding clauses and no room to contest. Another voice, maybe someone from the C-suite, asking the question no one wants to say out loud. Does she know we know? And legal responding with a flat, clinical, we assume she does. She filed the IP protections in her name. He's under no obligation to inform us of anything further. Mark doesn't say a word. He just sits there, blinds drawn, fingers limp, staring at a folder with my name on it. I imagine the way his skin itches when he realizes I've been sitting out there, watching this whole thing like a silent god with a front row seat to his undoing. That somewhere between the budget cuts, the stolen credit, and the demotion he thought would break me, I decided to rewrite the rules, not through revenge emails or HR complaints, but through strategy, precision, patience. He thought I was a threat, so he pushed me out, and in doing so, he gave me the perfect vantage point to destroy him. All I could do was smile, quiet, slow, the kind that comes from knowing the avalanche has already started, and all he can do now is wait for it to hit. The office was too quiet, not peaceful, hushed, that fragile silence that wraps around bad news like bubble wrap. You could hear the printer's idle hum, the ticking of the cheap wall clock, someone's throat clearing in the kitchenette like they were afraid to cough too loud. And then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, hesitant, like a man approaching a guillotine wearing his best tie. Mark. He didn't look like Mark anymore. Not the one who strutted around dropping buzzwords like birdseed. Not the one who steamrolled meetings and handed down fake promotions like a game show host. This Mark had gray ringing his temples, eyes red like sleep had packed up and left weeks ago. His blazer didn't quite fit, like he'd shrunk inside it. A man hollowed out by the consequences of his own mediocrity. He walked past his team, past the dev ops crew pretending not to notice, past the glass conference room where Anna froze mid-keystroke, eyes locked on him like a deer spotting headlights. Every chair turned, every breath held. He reached the front desk, stopped, swallowed hard, and said, just barely above a whisper, "Sharon, do you have a minute?" I didn't look up right away. Let him stew. I finished the page of my magazine, some trashy gossip rag from the waiting area with a cover that screamed 10 celebrities who got dumped by text. Then I folded it neatly, set it down, and looked him dead in the face. His lips twitched. Words failed him. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make his spine shrink another inch. I was wondering, he said, eyes flicking down to the countertop like it might open up and swallow him, if you'd be open to setting up a time to talk about the licensing terms. There it was. The taste of victory, salty, cold, served under fluorescent lights on a Tuesday morning. I stared at him. This man, this petty, glory-snatching, buzzword-slinging fraud, who once told me my strengths were more supportive than strategic, who smiled as he buried my career under PowerPoint decks he didn't even understand, now stood before me, begging to rent the very thing he stole from. I smiled, not sweet, not cruel, just empty. You'll have to submit a formal inquiry through the SWS portal, Mark. He blinked. I tilted my head. We have protocols. Legal will route it. I'll review availability after that. He stood there, frozen. Behind him, the office watched. Everyone pretending not to. Every neck craned just slightly. Every eye pretending to look past us but catching every syllable. Of course, he mumbled. I understand. I nodded once. Picked my magazine back up. Flipped to a random page. He lingered like he wanted to say something else. Apologize, maybe, or beg. But I was already gone again, buried in an article about a celebrity divorce and the best brunch spots in Atlanta. Mark turned, shoulders hunched. He shuffled back across the office, one painful step at a time, and that was it. The bridge burned, the earth salted, the queen, crowned in silence behind a fake ficus plant and a pile of unopened mail. I never got promoted back, didn't need to. I'd already won. Quietly, perfectly, and now he works for me. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.